What happens when a species that has spent millennia learning to kill each other suddenly finds a common enemy? What occurs when humanity's greatest weakness, our tendency toward violence, becomes our most terrifying strength? The Zephyrians thought they understood warfare. They had conquered 17 star systems, enslaved dozens of species, and perfected the art of psychological domination. Their strategy was simple: broadcast the massacre of millions to break the spirit of entire worlds. But they made one critical error in their calculations. They chose to test this strategy on humans. In 2387, on a quiet Tuesday morning, 10 million humans died in 12 minutes while the galaxy watched. The Zephyrians expected surrender. They expected fear. They expected broken spirits and bent knees. Instead, they got something far worse. They got humanity united for the first time in its history. This is the story of what happened next. This is the story of how Earth didn't just respond to genocide, it redefined it. This is the story of why the Zephyrian Empire, which had stood for 3,000 years, lasted exactly 72 days after they killed those 10 million humans. And this is the story of why, today, the word human is whispered in 1,000 different languages across the galaxy. Not with hatred, but with something far more powerful: fear. The morning of March 15th, 2387, started like any other Tuesday on Luna City. Coffee shops opened their doors to the pre-dawn crowd, transport tubes hummed with their usual efficiency, and children complained about math homework as they walked to school. In the residential sectors, families gathered around breakfast tables, sharing plans for the day ahead. Sarah Chen kissed her husband goodbye at exactly 7:23 a.m., reminding him to pick up groceries on his way home from the engineering plant. 2 sectors over, Marcus Rodriguez was teaching his 5-year-old daughter how to tie her shoes, both of them laughing when she got the loops confused again. In the commercial district, elderly Mrs. Patterson was opening her flower shop, arranging fresh hydroponic roses in the window display. None of them knew that alien eyes were watching. 300,000 kilometers away, the Zephyrian dreadnought Dominion's Edge hung in space like a metallic storm cloud. Its hull stretched for nearly 2 kilometers, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and reduce stars to flickering embers. But today, its most important cargo wasn't weapons, it was cameras. Admiral Vexstar stood on the command deck, his reptilian features twisted into what his species considered a smile. His scales shimmered with anticipation as he watched the tactical display show Luna City's population density. 10 million humans lived in that dome, completely unaware that they had just become part of a much larger game. "Broadcasting systems are online, Admiral," reported his communications officer. "The signal will reach every inhabited system in this sector of the galaxy." "Excellent." Vexstar's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Today we demonstrate to the galaxy what happens to species that dare to exist in territories we claim. Today we show them the price of resistance." The Zephyrian Empire had perfected this tactic over centuries. Find a heavily populated world or station. Kill enough inhabitants to break the spirit of the entire species. Broadcast the massacre across all channels so every other civilization would see and understand their fate if they dared to resist. It was psychological warfare at its most effective. One planet's suffering would prevent wars across 100 others. They had used this strategy on the Kalari of Proxima 7. Dead, not 2 species surrendered within hours. The Mendaki had lasted even less time after watching their children die on Mendaki Prime. 17 different species had bent the knee after witnessing what Zephyrian mercy looked like. But the Zephyrians had never encountered humans before. On Luna City, the first sign of trouble came at 8:47 a.m., when the communication arrays suddenly blazed to life with an incoming transmission of impossible strength. Emergency sirens began wailing as the alien signal overrode every screen, every display, every communication device in the colony. A reptilian face appeared on millions of screens simultaneously. Admiral Vexstar looked directly into the cameras, his yellow eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. "People of Earth," he began, his voice translated into perfect English by quantum linguistic processors. "I am Admiral Vexstar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been selected for a demonstration. Your Luna colony exists within territory now claimed by our empire. As you are primitive and worthless, we have decided to show the galaxy what happens to those who occupy our space without permission." Sarah Chen stared at her kitchen screen in confusion and growing horror. Around the colony, millions of other humans were having the same reaction: disbelief, fear, and a growing understanding that something terrible was about to happen. "You have 60 seconds to observe your own extinction," Vexstar continued. "Know that your deaths serve a purpose. They will teach other species to submit immediately rather than waste our time with resistance. Your sacrifice ensures that others will be spared similar fates, assuming they prove more intelligent than you have. On Earth, in the Global Defense Headquarters buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, alarms screamed as Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the transmission with growing fury. Her staff scrambled to establish communication with Luna City, but every channel was blocked by the alien signal. "How many people are on Luna City right now?" she asked her aide. 10,200,000, Admiral, including 300,000 children. Vasquez felt ice form in her veins. In her 30 years of military service, through wars, terrorist attacks, and natural disasters, she had never felt hatred like this. It burned in her chest like molten metal, pure and focused. "Time to impact on Luna City?" she asked. 17 seconds, Admiral. The Zephyrian weapons were already charging. Exotic particles that could disrupt molecular bonds gathered in the Dreadnought's primary batteries. The weapons weren't designed for quick deaths. They were designed for spectacular ones, the kind that would make impressive footage. On Luna City, people pressed against windows, looking up at the stars, trying to see their executioners. Children cried, adults held each other. Some prayed, others cursed. A few stood in defiant silence. Sarah Chen held her neighbor's hand as they watched the sky together. "At least it will be quick," she whispered. She was wrong. The Zephyrian particle beam struck Luna City's dome at exactly 8:49 a.m. Earth Standard Time. But instead of exploding or simply dying, the dome began to dissolve, slowly. The exotic particles didn't just destroy, they unraveled. They took apart the molecular structure of everything they touched, turning solid matter into component atoms. The process took 12 minutes. For 12 minutes, 10 million humans died while the galaxy watched. The dome dissolved first, exposing the city to vacuum. But the death didn't come from decompression. The particles were already in the air, in the buildings, in the people. They dissolved slowly, piece by piece, while still conscious. Sarah Chen watched her hand disappear finger by finger. Marcus Rodriguez held his daughter as they both faded away together, atom by atom. Mrs. Patterson's flowers dissolved first, then her shop, then herself. Her final thought, a hope that someone, somewhere, would remember that there had been beauty here. And across the galaxy, 1,000 different species watched it happen. They saw the terror in human faces. They heard the screams that cut off abruptly as vocal cords simply ceased to exist. They witnessed what it meant to cross the Zephyrian Empire. But they also saw something the Zephyrians missed. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez watched every second of those 12 minutes. Her staff watched with her. Throughout the solar system, every human who could receive the signal watched their people die in the most horrible way imaginable. And something changed in humanity that day. When the last human on Luna City finally dissolved into scattered atoms, Admiral Vexstar smiled into the camera again. "This concludes our demonstration. Any species wishing to avoid similar fates should immediately transmit surrender codes to the nearest Zephyrian vessel. You have 24 hours to comply. Those who do not respond will be assumed hostile and dealt with accordingly." The transmission ended. The galaxy was silent. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez stood slowly from her chair. Around her, every person in the command center was staring at blank screens with expressions of barely controlled rage. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then Vasquez spoke, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to fill the entire room. "Get me the President. Get me the Secretary General of the United Nations. Get me the commanders of every military force on Earth." She paused, looking around at her staff. "And get me the specifications for every nuclear weapon, antimatter device, and experimental weapon system we've ever built." "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "what are your orders?" Vasquez looked back at the empty screen, where 10 million humans had just died while their executioners smiled. Her answer came from somewhere deep and primal, a place where civilized restraint had just been burned away by naked alien malice. "We're going to war," she said, "and we're going to show these aliens what happens when you mistake human compassion for human weakness." 6 hours later, as reports came in from across the galaxy of other species surrendering in terror after witnessing the Luna City massacre, humanity made its reply to the Zephyrian Empire. It wasn't a surrender, it was a declaration of war against not just the Zephyrians, but every species that had watched 10 million humans die and done nothing to help. Earth's message was broadcast on the same quantum frequencies the aliens had used, ensuring every civilized world would hear it. The message was simple. You killed our people while the galaxy watched. Now the galaxy can watch while we kill you, all of you, starting now. And for the first time in 3,000 years of Zephyrian expansion, An entire species had not surrendered after witnessing their power. Instead, they had promised revenge. Admiral Vextar, reviewing the intercepted human transmissions, felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: uncertainty. These humans should have been broken. They should have been begging for mercy. Instead, they were mobilizing for war against an empire that spanned 17 star systems. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human solar system. Whatever they're doing it fast. Vextar looked at the tactical display showing Earth's frantic activity: ships launching, weapons charging, military forces mobilizing with a speed and efficiency that seemed impossible for such a primitive species. How long until our main fleet arrives, he asked. 71 days, Admiral. Vextar nodded slowly. 71 days should be more than enough time to prepare for whatever primitive response these humans might mount. After all, they were just one species on one world, facing an empire that had conquered 17 star systems. What could they possibly do in 71 days? He was about to find out. Day 1 after Luna City burned, and Earth transformed. President Maria Santos stood in the war room beneath the White House, surrounded by screens showing data that would have been impossible just 24 hours earlier. Manufacturing indices that defied physics. Military recruitment numbers that broke every historical record. Resource allocation charts that suggested humanity had somehow discovered new laws of economics. "Ma'am," General Harrison said, consulting his tablet with barely concealed amazement, "we've got 17 million volunteers for military service as of 1 hour ago. That number is climbing by about 50,000 every 10 minutes. Santos nodded grimly. "And production? Every military contractor on Earth has switched to continuous operation. Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon, they're all running 24-hour shifts. But it's not just the big companies. Auto manufacturers are retooling to build weapons. Electronics companies are producing military-grade components. Even civilian shipyards are converting to military production." The president turned to Admiral Vasquez, who had not slept in 36 hours, but looked more alert than ever. "Admiral, give me the honest assessment. Can we actually fight an interstellar empire?" Vasquez pulled up a holographic display that filled the center of the room. It showed the solar system, but not as anyone had ever seen it before. Streams of ships moved between planets. Industrial stations appeared around asteroids. Weapon platforms materialized in previously empty space. "Ma'am, 3 days ago I would have said no. Today, I'm not sure the Zephyrians understand what they've awakened." She manipulated the display, zooming in on Mars. "Look at this. The Mars colonies have quadrupled their industrial output. They're strip mining Phobos and Deimos simultaneously. In 71 days, we'll have more raw materials than some entire star systems." "But weapons, Admiral. Can we build weapons that can actually hurt them?" Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the hastily formed Xenocide Project, stepped forward. She was pale, exhausted, and her eyes held the kind of intensity usually reserved for the religiously obsessed.
"We've analyzed the particle beams they used on Luna City.
The technology is advanced, but it follows understandable physics. We can build countermeasures." "How fast?" "We've already begun. The first test firing is scheduled for day 12. Santos stared at her. 12 days? You're going to develop, build, and test alien-level weapons technology in 12 days? No, ma'am. Doctor, Kim's smile was cold and sharp. We're going to develop, build, and test weapons that make their technology look primitive in 12 days. The president looked around the room at her advisors, seeing the same expression on every face. It wasn't just determination or anger, though both were certainly present. It was something more fundamental, a species-wide decision that had been made in the moment 10 million humans dissolved into atoms. There would be no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. There would only be the complete and total destruction of every being that had participated in, enabled, or simply watched the Luna City massacre. Day 7, and the transformation was visible from orbit. Captain Lisa Rodriguez piloted her transport through the newly crowded space around Earth, marveling at the impossibility of what she was seeing. 3 months ago, Earth's orbital infrastructure had consisted of a few dozen stations and maybe 200 active ships. Now, thousands of vessels moved in carefully orchestrated patterns, while massive construction platforms assembled structures that had no business existing. "Control, this is Transport 77 requesting clearance to dock at Station Forge." "Transport 77, be advised that Station Forge is now operational and has been redesignated as Weapons Platform Alpha 1. Proceed to Docking Bay 7. "And Captain Rodriguez?" "Yes, Control? welcome to the war. Lisa smiled grimly as she approached the station that hadn't existed a week ago. Station Forge, now Weapons Platform Alpha 1, was the size of a small city, bristling with weapon arrays that seemed to grow larger every time she looked at them. And it was one of 12 identical platforms that had somehow been built in a week. As she docked, Lisa caught sight of the construction crews working in spacesuits, assembling something that looked like it belonged in a nightmare rather than reality. The weapon array stretched for nearly a kilometer, crackling with energy that made her ship's sensors scream warnings. "What the hell are you people building out there?" she muttered. The answer came from an unexpected source. Her ship's communication system suddenly activated with an incoming message from Dr. Kim. "Captain Rodriguez, you're looking at humanity's first stellar-class particle cannon. It can crack a moon in half from 50 million kilometers away. We'll have 24 of them operational by day 30. Lisa stared at the impossible weapon. "Dr. Kim, how is this possible? A week ago, we didn't even know aliens existed." "Captain, do you know what humans are really good at?" Dr. Kim's voice carried a strange mix of pride and horror. "We're good at killing things. We've spent our entire evolutionary history getting better at killing things. We've killed everything from bacteria to blue whales. We've invented thousands of ways to kill each other. We've gotten so good at killing that we've killed entire species by accident." The communication paused for a moment before continuing. "The Zephyrians just gave us a new target, and Captain Rodriguez, we've never wanted to kill anything as much as we want to kill them."
Day 15 and the first field test.
The asteroid designated 2387, Alpha, had been selected carefully, similar in composition to Zephyrian hull materials, based on spectral analysis of the dreadnought that had destroyed Luna City. It hung in space, waiting, while humanity's first attempt at alien-killing technology prepared to demonstrate its effectiveness. Dr. Kim stood in the control room of Weapons Platform Alpha 1, surrounded by engineers, physicists, and military personnel, who had been working 18-hour days for 2 weeks straight. The targeting array locked onto the asteroid, which was roughly the size of a Zephyrian battleship. "All stations report ready," came the voice of the weapons officer. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Vasquez's voice crackled over the communicator. "The entire military command is watching. No pressure." Kim allowed herself a brief smile. "Admiral, the pressure was applied when they killed 10 million humans while we watched. This is just release." She turned to the weapons officer. "Fire when ready." The stellar-class particle cannon discharged with a sound that somehow carried through vacuum, or perhaps it was just the vibration of the platform itself as unimaginable energies flowed through its systems. A beam of coherent exotic particles, visible as a brilliant blue-white line, reached across space and touched the asteroid. The rock didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply ceased to exist, converted to its component atoms in a fraction of a second. The control room was silent for several seconds. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Vasquez's voice was barely a whisper. "What was the energy output on that test?" "Approximately 47 times more powerful than the weapon that destroyed Luna City, Admiral." Another pause. "How many of these weapons will be operational by day 71? 812, ma'am, plus the mobile units."
Mobile units.
"We're mounting them on ships, Admiral. The first 50 should be ready by day 30. Admiral Vasquez looked at the empty space where the asteroid had been and felt something she hadn't expected to feel again after Luna City. Hope. Day 23, and Earth's diplomacy began. Ambassador Chen Mei-Lin sat across from Zygothian Trade Minister Kek Saval in the neutral station orbiting Kepler, 442b. The Zygothians were one of the 17 species that had watched the Luna City massacre and immediately surrendered to Zephyrian demands. They were also one of the species that had refused to condemn the attack when Earth had requested support from the galactic community. Ambassador Chen, Minister Kexval said, his translator rendering his chittering speech into English, "Surely you understand that the Zygothian Republic cannot risk the wrath of the Zephyrian Empire by supporting your cause. Your species is brave, but one planet cannot stand against 17 star systems." Chen smiled politely, consulting her tablet. "Minister, I'm not here to request your support against the Zephyrians." "Oh? Then why have you requested this meeting?" "I'm here to inform you that in 48 days, the Zephyrian Empire will cease to exist. At that point, Earth will begin diplomatic discussions with species that may have inadvertently supported genocide through their inaction." The Zygothians' compound eyes widened. "Ambassador, surely you cannot be serious. The Zephyrians possess weapons that can destroy stars. Their fleet numbers in the thousands. Your species has never even left your own solar system before this crisis." Chen's smile never wavered. but something changed in her eyes that made the alien diplomat lean back in his chair. Minister, let me share something with you. 70 years ago, humans fought a war against each other that killed 70 million people. We built weapons that could wipe out entire cities in seconds. We did this to our own species, Minister. Imagine what we're building for aliens who killed 10 million of us while we watched. She leaned forward slightly. The Zephyrians made one critical error. They assumed that because we had never fought aliens before, we didn't know how to fight. But Minister, humans have never done anything but fight. We fought disease, predators, natural disasters, and each other for our entire existence. War isn't something humans learn to do, it's something we evolved to excel at. The Zygothian was very still now. What exactly are you saying, Ambassador? I'm saying that in 48 days you'll have a choice to make. You can continue to be associated with the species that committed genocide while the galaxy watched, or you can begin making amends to the species that erased the genociders from existence. Chen stood, gathering her materials. I'd suggest you start preparing your decision now. As she left the meeting room, Chen activated her communicator. Control, this is Ambassador Chen. The Zygothians have been informed. Moving on to the hegemony meeting. Understood, Ambassador. How did they respond? Chen looked back through the observation window at Minister Kexbal, who was frantically speaking into his own communicator, probably reporting to his superiors. I think they're beginning to understand that they may have chosen the wrong side. Day 31 and humanity's mobile fleet launched. Admiral James Harrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, humanity's first purpose-built alien-killing warship. Around him, the command crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Despite the fact that this type of ship had been designed and built in 31 days, through the viewports he could see the rest of First Strike Fleet. 50 ships that had never existed in any human military doctrine because humans had never needed to kill aliens before. Each ship was armed with weapons that made pre-war human military technology look like stone knives. Each ship carried crews that had volunteered knowing they might not survive what was coming. Each ship was crewed by humans who had watched 10 million people die while aliens smiled. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving final targeting data from Earth Command. Display it. The holographic tactical display showed the Zephyrian battle group that was currently occupying the former Luna City orbital space. 16 ships, including the dreadnought Dominion's Edge, the same ship that had broadcast the massacre to the galaxy. How long until the main Zephyrian fleet arrives to support them? Harrison asked. 40 days, sir. Perfect. Harrison looked around at his bridge crew, seeing the same cold determination on every face. Helm, set course for Luna City orbital space. Maximum acceleration. Sir, that will put us there in 18 hours. Good. That gives the aliens 18 hours to enjoy being alive. As the Retribution and her sister ships accelerated toward their first battle, Admiral Harrison opened a communication channel to his fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Harrison. In 18 hours, we will engage the aliens responsible for the Luna City massacre. They are expecting us to be weak, frightened primitives, begging for mercy. Instead, they're going to learn what happens when you mistake human civilization for human nature. He paused, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed peaceful and infinite, but instead full of enemies waiting to be destroyed. For the past month, Earth has been building weapons, ships, and strategies designed for one purpose: to kill aliens more efficiently than they can kill us. Today, we find out if we've succeeded, and tomorrow, we start hunting down every single being that watched our people die and did nothing. The fleet acknowledged his transmission and continued accelerating toward battle, carrying with them humanity's first attempt at interstellar warfare. Behind them, Earth continued its impossible transformation, building weapons and ships at a rate that defied every law of economics and physics, driven by the simple realization that 10 million humans had died while aliens laughed. Ahead of them waited the first aliens who would learn why that had been a mistake. Admiral Vextar, reviewing his sensors as the human fleet approached, felt that unfamiliar sensation of uncertainty growing stronger. These ships were moving faster than any primitive species should have been capable of building. They were larger than intelligence reports had suggested humans could construct, and they were broadcasting a message on all frequencies, repeating it over and over as they approached. For Luna City, no survivors. For the first time in his career, Admiral Vextar began to wonder if he had made an error in tactics. He was about to find out just how large that error had been. Admiral Vextar watched his tactical displays with growing unease as the human fleet approached Luna City's orbital space. The 16 ships under his command were veterans of dozens of campaigns. Each one had participated in the subjugation of entire species. The dreadnought Dominion's Edge alone had the firepower to level continents, but the 50 human ships approaching his position were broadcasting sensor readings that made no sense. Tactical Officer Zekan, verify these energy signatures, Vexstar ordered. The younger Zephyrian checked his instruments twice before responding. Admiral, the readings are correct. The human vessels are showing power outputs comparable to our own battleships. Their largest ships are reading as equivalent to light cruisers in our fleet. Impossible. 3 weeks ago, these humans were using chemical rockets and primitive fusion drives. Their weapons were barely capable of destroying their own cities, much less engaging our ships. Sir, perhaps they are using some form of sensor deception? Trying to appear stronger than they actually are?
Vextar considered this.
It was possible. Primitive species often attempted to bluff their way out of hopeless situations. But something about the approaching human ship suggested this was not deception. The energy signatures were too clean, too consistent, too purposeful. Communications Officer Yextal opened a channel to the human fleet. Channel open, Admiral. Vexstar straightened, preparing to deliver the speech that had convinced 17 species to surrender without a fight. Human vessels, you are approaching a restricted zone under the control of the Zephyrian Empire. Your Luna colony was destroyed as an example to your species and others of the consequences of occupying Imperial territory. If you withdraw immediately and transmit surrender codes, your deaths will be quick. If you continue your approach, you will suffer the same fate as your Luna City colonists. The response came immediately, broadcast from the lead human ship in a voice that carried no trace of fear or hesitation. Zephyrian vessels, this is Admiral James Harrison of the United Earth Forces. You are in violation of solar space and are directly responsible for the murder of 10 million human beings. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to flee or resist will result in your immediate destruction. The Zephyrian bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years of expansion, no species had ever responded to their demands with demands of their own. Admiral, Tactical Officer Zekan whispered, they're ordering us to surrender. Vexstar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Rage. These primitive animals dared to offer him terms? They demanded the surrender of vessels that had conquered star systems? All ships, battle formation, he commanded. Prepare to demonstrate to these humans why 17 species knelt before us. But as his fleet moved into attack position, Vexstar noticed something that made his scales crawl with an emotion he refused to name. The human ships weren't retreating. They weren't begging for mercy. They weren't even attempting to negotiate. Instead, they were accelerating directly toward his battle line, weapons charging, broadcasting a message that repeated over and over, for Luna City. For the 10 million. No quarter asked. None given. Admiral, Communications Officer Yextal reported, his voice tight with something approaching panic. I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the human weapons. Sir, these readings suggest their primary batteries are more powerful than our own. Impossible, Vexstar said automatically, but his conviction was wavering. 20 seconds to weapons range, Tactical reported. All ships target the largest human vessel. Full power to weapons. Show them the price of challenging the Empire. But as the Zephyrian ships charged their weapons, Admiral Harrison was giving his own orders aboard the Retribution. All ships target assignment as follows. Alpha Group, take the Dreadnought. Beta Group, cruisers. Gamma Group, destroyers. Delta and Echo Groups, clean up anything that survives the first salvo. Admiral, his weapons officer asked. Rules of engagement? Harrison looked at the tactical display showing the Zephyrian ships. The same ships that had broadcast the torture and murder of 10 million humans while their crews laughed. His answer came from somewhere deep and primal. A place where civilized rules of warfare had been burned away by the sight of children dissolving atom by atom. There are no rules of engagement. There are no prisoners to be taken. There are no survivors to be spared. He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every member of his bridge crew. Kill them all. The Battle of Luna City orbital space lasted exactly 7 minutes. The Zephyrians opened fire first, their exotic particle beams reaching across space toward the human fleet with energies that had shattered moons and cracked planets. For a moment, Vexstar felt the familiar satisfaction of watching primitive ships about to be reduced to their component atoms. Then the human fleet returned fire. The Stellar-class particle cannons that Dr. Kim had designed specifically for killing aliens discharged simultaneously from 47 ships. The beams that struck the Zephyrian formation weren't just more powerful than anything the aliens had ever faced, they were fundamentally different. Designed by humans who had spent 30 days studying every aspect of Zephyrian technology and engineering, better ways to destroy it. The Zephyrian shields, which had never failed against any known weapon, lasted approximately 1.3 seconds against the human assault. The Dominion's edge, Admiral Vexstar's mighty dreadnought that had destroyed dozens of worlds, was struck by 9 separate particle beams simultaneously. Its hull, composed of materials that had resisted weapons for 3 millennia, began to dissolve, but where Zephyrian weapons took minutes to completely destroy a target, the human weapons were designed for efficiency. The great ship simply came apart, its molecular structure disrupted so completely that it ceased to exist as a coherent object in less than 4 seconds. Vexstar had time for exactly one coherent thought as his command deck dissolved around him. What have we awakened? The rest of the Zephyrian battle group lasted slightly longer, almost 3 full minutes, before the last ship was reduced to scattered atoms. 16 vessels that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were gone, leaving nothing but expanding clouds of debris and radiation. Admiral Harrison watched the tactical display clear of enemy contacts, then opened a communication channel to his fleet. All ships, report status. Vengeance reporting no damage, Admiral. Justice reporting all systems nominal. Reckoning reporting ready for next engagement. One by one, all 50 ships reported the same thing. They had just destroyed 16 alien warships without suffering so much as a scratch on their hulls. Communications, Harrison ordered. Broadcast the engagement record to all human vessels and Earth Command. Then prepare a galaxy-wide transmission. Ready for broadcast, Admiral. Harrison looked at the expanding debris clouds where the Zephyrian ships had been, thinking about 10 million humans who would never see this moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of humanity's first victory in an interstellar war. To all species currently monitoring human communications, this is Admiral James Harrison of the United Earth Forces. 32 days ago, Zephyrian vessels murdered 10 million human civilians while broadcasting their deaths to the galaxy as entertainment. Today, those same vessels have been eliminated. He paused, letting the implications sink into whatever alien civilizations might be listening. This is the beginning, not the end. Every Zephyrian ship will be destroyed. Every Zephyrian world will be occupied. Every member of their species will answer for the genocide they committed while you watched and did nothing. The transmission continued, carrying humanity's new doctrine to the stars. To the species that surrendered to Zephyrian demands after witnessing the Luna City massacre, you are not forgotten. To the species that refused to condemn genocide when Earth requested your support, you are not forgiven. To any species considering resistance to human expansion into former Zephyrian territory, remember Luna City, and remember what happened to those who killed our people. The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate the fact that a species they had considered primitive had just eliminated an entire Zephyrian battle group without losing a single ship. But the real message wasn't in the words, it was in the casualty figures. 16 Zephyrian warships destroyed, 0 human vessels damaged, a kill ratio that suggested humanity hadn't just learned to fight aliens, they had learned to exterminate them. On Earth, President Santos received the battle reports with grim satisfaction. Around her, the war room staff allowed themselves a moment of celebration before returning to their preparations for the next phase. Admiral Vasquez, Santos said, what's the status of our main battle fleet? 700 ships completed, ma'am. Another 300 will be ready within 2 weeks, all armed with weapons based on the Luna City engagement analysis. And our intelligence on Zephyrian fleet positions? We've identified their main battle fleet location, their primary shipyards, and 17 occupied worlds. Our long-range scouts report that they're beginning to mobilize their full military strength in response to the Luna City engagement. Santos nodded. The aliens were finally taking humanity seriously. Unfortunately for them, they were about 40 days too late. What about the other species? Any change in their positions? Mixed reactions, ma'am. Some are offering to mediate. Others are requesting clarification of our intentions regarding non-Zephyrian species. A few are quietly withdrawing from territories adjacent to former Zephyrian space. And the Zygothians? They've requested an urgent meeting with Ambassador Chen. It seems our diplomatic message was well received. Santos smiled coldly. The carrot and the stick. Humanity would negotiate with species willing to make amends for their complicity in genocide, but the stick would be what happened to those who continued to oppose them. Admiral, begin Phase 2 operations. I want Zephyrian shipyards destroyed before their main fleet can be reinforced.
Yes, ma'am.
The second strike fleet launches in 6 hours. As Admiral Harrison's victorious ships began their journey to the next target, they left behind something more significant than battlefield wreckage. They left behind proof that humanity had not just survived first contact with a hostile alien empire, They had turned first contact into an extermination campaign. In the depths of Zephyrian space, High Admiral Kexmore received the reports of the Luna City engagement with disbelief that quickly transformed into something approaching panic. 16 ships destroyed without inflicting any casualties on the humans? Impossible. The reports had to be wrong, but as additional intelligence came in, the impossible became undeniable. Humanity had somehow developed weapons technology that exceeded Zephyrian capabilities. They had built a fleet from nothing in 30 days. They had declared war on an empire that spanned 17 star systems and won their first engagement decisively. Analysis Officer Kexmore ordered, provide tactical assessment of human capabilities based on the Luna City engagement. Sir, if these reports are accurate, human weapons are approximately 50% more powerful than our own. Their ships appear to be faster and more maneuverable. Their tactical coordination suggests military experience far beyond what a primitive species should possess. How is this possible? 35 days ago, they were using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Sir, human historical records suggest they have considerable experience with rapid military development. Their species appears to excel at technological advancement during periods of conflict. Kexmore considered this. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Zephyrians had never encountered a species that became more dangerous after being attacked. Every other race had either surrendered immediately or fought with decreasing effectiveness as their resources were depleted. What is the status of our main fleet? Fully mobilized, sir. 400 ships of the line, plus support vessels. The largest fleet ever assembled by the Empire. Time to reach human space? 39 days at maximum acceleration. Kexmore looked at the tactical display showing human fleet movements. 39 days should be sufficient to overwhelm whatever primitive response these animals could mount. Even if their weapons were more advanced than expected, they were still just one species fighting an empire. But as he studied the reports from Luna City, Kexmore felt something he had never experienced in 3,000 years of Zephyrian dominance. For the first time since the empire had begun its expansion, they were fighting an enemy that seemed to be getting stronger rather than weaker. And they had 39 days to figure out how to stop them before the human fleet reached Zephyrian space. The countdown to humanity's real war was just beginning. Day 43, and humanity brought war to alien space. Admiral Sarah Chen, no relation to the diplomat, commanded the Second Strike Fleet from the bridge of the UES Inevitable, watching through the viewports as her task force emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 285 system. Before them lay the Zephyrian Empire's primary shipyard complex, a massive installation that had been building warships for over a millennium. The facility was enormous. Dozens of construction berths, manufacturing stations, and defensive platforms spread across several thousand cubic kilometers of space. It was protected by 43 warships and considered absolutely impregnable by Zephyrian strategic doctrine. It had also built the ships that destroyed Luna City. Tactical assessment, Admiral Chen ordered. Ma'am, we count 43 enemy vessels ranging from destroyers to battleships, multiple defensive platforms with heavy particle cannons, estimated defensive firepower equivalent to approximately 60 ships of the line. Admiral Chen nodded, studying the tactical display. Her fleet consisted of 37 ships, each one built specifically for destroying Zephyrian technology. The odds were almost even, which meant the aliens had no chance at all. Communications, broadcast, surrender, demand on all frequencies. Channel open, Admiral. Chen looked directly into the camera, knowing her words would be recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. Zephyrian forces at Kepler 285, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Forces. Your shipyard facility. Constructed vessels used in the genocide of 10 million humans at Luna City. You will power down all weapons and defensive systems and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist will result in the complete destruction of this facility and all personnel. The response came within minutes, translated by the same quantum linguistic processors the aliens had used to broadcast their massacre. Human vessels. This is Fleet Commander Vexdal of the Imperial Shipyard Defense Force. You are trespassing in Imperial space and threatening Imperial installations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your actions. Admiral Chen smiled, but there was nothing warm in the expression. Commander Vexdal, you have 60 seconds to comply with surrender terms. After that, we will demonstrate what consequences actually look like. He cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Target priorities, shipyard facilities first, then defensive vessels. I want every construction berth destroyed before we engage their fleet. Ma'am, confirm targets locked, weapons charged and ready. All ships, execute attack pattern Sierra. For Luna City.
For Luna City, came the response from 37 ships simultaneously.
The Second Strike Fleet opened fire with weapons that had been improved based on lessons learned from the first engagement. The Stellar-class particle cannons had been modified to fire in sequence rather than simultaneously, creating a sustained bombardment that could overwhelm even the heaviest shields. The first targets were the shipyard construction berths, each one containing partially completed Zephyrian warships. The human weapons reached across space and began systematically destroying infrastructure that had taken centuries to build. Massive construction platforms simply evaporated under the sustained fire, taking with them the half-built ships that would never threaten human worlds. Fleet Commander Vexdal watched in horror as facilities that had been considered permanent fixtures began disappearing from his tactical displays. All ships, emergency battle formation, protect the shipyards. But the Zephyrian defensive fleet was already under attack. The human ships had divided their fire with mathematical precision, enough firepower to destroy the industrial facilities while simultaneously engaging the defending warships. The battle was over in 11 minutes. When the last Zephyrian ship finally succumbed to human weapons fire, Admiral Chen surveyed the wreckage of what had been the Empire's primary shipyard. 43 enemy vessels destroyed, 17 major construction facilities eliminated. Hundreds of partially completed warships reduced to scrap. Her own fleet reported 0 casualties. Communications prepared galaxy-wide broadcast. Ready, Admiral. To all species monitoring human communications, the Zephyrian shipyard at Kepler 285 has been destroyed. This facility was responsible for constructing vessels used in the genocide of human civilians. It will not build ships again. She paused, consulting her tactical display of nearby Zephyrian installations. We are transmitting coordinates of 6 additional Zephyrian military installations. These facilities will be destroyed over the next 14 days. Any species currently trading with, supporting, or providing aid to Zephyrian forces should consider their positions carefully. The transmission ended, but Admiral Chen immediately opened another channel, this one directed specifically at Earth Command. Control, this is Admiral Chen. Kepler, AAF. 285 shipyard eliminated. Moving to secondary targets. Estimated Zephyrian ship construction capacity reduced by 47%. Understood, Admiral Chen. Excellent work. Be advised that Third Strike Fleet has engaged Zephyrian forces at their mining operations in the Vega system. Complete success there as well. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. While her ships had been destroying shipyards, other human fleets had been systematically eliminating Zephyrian resource extraction operations, supply depots, and communication relays. It was a coordinated campaign designed not just to defeat the Zephyrian Empire, but to ensure it could never rebuild. Day 51, and the galaxy began to understand. Ambassador Chen Meilin sat across from Zygothian Trade Minister Kexval in the same neutral station where they had met 4 weeks earlier. But the aliens' attitude had changed dramatically since their last conversation. Ambassador Chen, the Zygothian said, his translated voice carrying a tone of barely controlled panic. The Zygothian Republic wishes to formally apologize for any actions that may have been interpreted as supporting Zephyrian policies. How interesting. 4 weeks ago, you informed me that the Republic could not risk Zephyrian wrath by supporting our cause. Has something changed? Minister Kexisval's compound eyes shifted nervously. Ambassador, your species has destroyed 40% of Zephyrian military infrastructure in 3 weeks. Their main fleet is still 19 days away from Earth, but they may not have shipyards to return to when this conflict ends. Chen consulted her tablet, which showed real-time updates from human fleet operations. Actually, Minister, our latest projections suggest 57% destruction of Zephyrian infrastructure by the time their main fleet reaches our space, and we've identified the locations of their core worlds. Their core worlds? The alien's voice rose an octave. Ambassador, surely you don't intend to attack civilian populations? Chen's expression didn't change, but her voice carried the weight of 10 million dead humans. Minister, the Zephyrians broadcast the murder of our civilians as entertainment. They dissolved our children atom by atom, while their crews laughed. They filmed it and distributed it across the galaxy as a threat to other species. She leaned forward slightly. Every Zephyrian civilian who watched that broadcast and approved. Everyone who remained silent while their government committed genocide. They are not innocent bystanders, Minister. They are accessories to mass murder. But Ambassador, the scale of retaliation you're suggesting, the scale of retaliation we're implementing, Chen corrected. Minister, let me be clear about humanity's position. The Zephyrian Empire will cease to exist, Every world they control will be occupied by human forces. Every ship in their fleet will be destroyed. Every member of their species will be relocated to reservation worlds where they can contemplate the consequences of genocide. Minister Kexfall was silent for several long moments. And species that may have inadvertently supported their actions? That depends entirely on their actions now. Species that actively assist in Zephyrian elimination may find humanity quite reasonable in future negotiations. Species that continue to harbor Zephyrian sympathies. Chen's smile was cold and sharp. Well, Minister, I'm sure you can draw your own conclusions. The meeting ended with the Zygothian Republic's formal offer to provide logistical support for human fleet operations. By the end of the day, 6 other species had made similar offers. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity hadn't just declared war on the Zephyrian Empire. They had declared war on the very concept of genocide being an acceptable political tool. Day 58, and High Admiral Kexmore received reports that shattered his remaining confidence. Intelligence Officer Kekval verified these numbers. Sir, the reports are accurate. Human forces have destroyed or captured 68% of our military infrastructure. 7 of our primary worlds have been occupied. Our mining operations in 4 systems have been eliminated entirely. Kexmore stared at the strategic display showing what remained of the Zephyrian Empire. Red markers indicated human-occupied territory, which now included a significant portion of what had been Imperial space just 8 weeks earlier. How many ships do we estimate they have deployed? Approximately 400 vessels, sir, all of them armed with weapons superior to our own. 400 ships built in 2 months, Kexmore said slowly. Intelligence reports suggested these humans had never built military spacecraft before this conflict. Sir, analysis of human historical records indicates this species has considerable experience with rapid military mobilization during existential conflicts. However, the scale and speed of their current buildup exceeds anything in their recorded history. Kexmore considered this. What drives them? We eliminated one of their colonies to demonstrate our power, as we have done with dozens of other species. Why haven't they surrendered?
Sir, human psychology appears to be
unusual. Analysis of their cultural records suggests they view the Luna City attack not as a demonstration of power, but as a personal insult requiring violent response. Their concept of proportional retaliation appears to be significantly different from other species. Different how? Sir, other species typically surrender when casualties reach 5 to 10% of their population. Humans appear willing to accept complete extinction rather than submit to foreign rule. Additionally, their cultural records suggest they view genocide not as an acceptable tool of warfare, but as an existential threat requiring the complete elimination of the perpetrating species. Kexmore felt that familiar sensation of uncertainty growing stronger. You're saying they will not negotiate a surrender? Sir, based on their public statements and observed behavior, they will not negotiate anything short of our complete destruction. Every communication from human authorities has emphasized that the Zephyrian Empire will cease to exist as a political entity. The High Admiral looked at the tactical display showing his main fleet. 400 ships representing the accumulated military might of 3,000 years of expansion. In 12 days, they would reach human space and engage in the largest fleet action in galactic history. What are their projected forces at the time of our arrival? Conservative estimates suggest they will have approximately 1,000 ships available for the main engagement, sir. All armed with weapons equivalent or superior to our own. 1,000 ships. Kexmore said the words slowly, trying to comprehend how a single species could build such a fleet from nothing in 70 days. Recommendations? Intelligence Officer Kekval hesitated before responding. Sir, strategic doctrine suggests we should negotiate a ceasefire and offer reparations for the Luna City incident. And if they refuse, then, sir, we will discover whether 3,000 years of Zephyrian dominance can overcome 70 days of human hatred. Kexmore looked at the display for several more minutes, watching as red markers continued to appear throughout what had been Imperial space. Human fleets were everywhere, systematically dismantling an empire that had seemed permanent just 2 months earlier. Continue with the advance, he ordered finally. We will engage their main fleet as planned. But as his staff prepared for the largest battle in Zephyrian history, Kexmore couldn't shake the feeling that they were not sailing toward victory. They were sailing toward the final destruction of everything the Empire had built. Behind them, Zephyrian worlds fell to human occupation forces. Ahead of them waited a species that had spent 70 days building weapons specifically designed to kill aliens. The countdown to humanity's final solution for the Zephyrian problem was almost over. Day 65, and Earth prepared for the largest space battle in human history. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Orbital Defense Platform Alpha, watching as nearly 1,500 human warships took up defensive positions throughout the solar system. It was a fleet that would have been impossible to imagine 3 months earlier, crewed by volunteers who had enlisted specifically to kill the aliens responsible for Luna City. Admiral, her aide reported, long-range sensors confirm the Zephyrian main fleet will arrive in 6 days. 412 ships, including their super dreadnought-class vessels. Vasquez nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed human fleet dispositions. Unlike the Zephyrians, who were approaching in a traditional battle formation, the human fleet was distributed in depth throughout the solar system. Every asteroid, every orbital platform, every piece of space infrastructure had been weaponized. What's the status of the special projects? The stellar destabilization devices are ready for deployment. Planet killer weapons are charged and targeted. The quantum resonance bombs are in position. Vasquez allowed herself a cold smile. Dr. Kim and her team had spent the past month developing weapons that went beyond simple ship-to-ship combat. If the Zephyrians somehow managed to break through the fleet defenses, they would discover that humanity had prepared some very unpleasant surprises.
And Admiral Harrison's mobile fleet?
Positioned beyond Pluto's orbit, they'll hit the Zephyrian formation from behind once the main engagement begins. Excellent. Vasquez opened a communication channel to all human forces, all commands. This is Admiral Vasquez. In 6 days, the aliens responsible for Luna City will arrive to face judgment. They expect to find a primitive species begging for mercy. Instead, they will discover that humanity has spent 71 days preparing their execution. She paused, looking out at the stars that were about to become a battlefield. For 71 days, we have built ships and weapons. For 71 days, we have planned their destruction. For 71 days, we have promised the 10 million dead that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. The transmission carried to every human ship, every orbital platform, every armed civilian who had volunteered for the final battle. Tomorrow, we keep that promise. For Luna City, for humanity, for the future where no alien will ever again mistake our compassion for weakness. The solar system prepared for war, armed with weapons built by a species that had just discovered they were very, very good at killing aliens. The Zephyrians were about to learn why that discovery had been a mistake. Day 71, the Battle of Sol High Admiral Kexmore stood on the bridge of the super dreadnought Empire's Wrath, watching his tactical displays as the Zephyrian main fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 412 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled in the Empire's 3,000-year history. Around him, the bridge crew worked with professional efficiency, but Kexmore could sense their underlying tension. Intelligence reports from the past 10 weeks had painted an increasingly disturbing picture of human capabilities. Species that had never left their home system had somehow built a fleet that matched Imperial strength. Primitives who had been using chemical rockets 2 months earlier were now occupying former Zephyrian worlds with weapons that exceeded Imperial technology. Sensor Officer Yexcon, report on human fleet dispositions. Sir, we are detecting approximately 1,500 human vessels throughout the system. They are not in traditional battle formation. Instead, they appear to be distributed in defensive positions around multiple orbital bodies. Kexmore frowned. 1,500 ships? Verify that count. Confirm, sir. Long-range sensors indicate human force strength at 1,500 vessels, plus what appears to be extensive orbital fortifications. The High Admiral stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 2 months ago, these humans had possessed perhaps a dozen military vessels. Now they outnumbered the largest fleet in Zephyrian history by nearly 4 to 1. Analysis Officer Kekval, explain how this is possible. Sir, human industrial capacity appears to have exceeded every projection. They have converted their entire civilization to military production. Additionally, intelligence suggests they have developed manufacturing techniques that allow for unprecedented construction speeds. What is their strategic deployment? Sir, they appear to have abandoned conventional fleet tactics entirely. Instead, they have turned their entire solar system into a weapons platform. Kexmore studied the display more carefully, noting the positions of human ships. They weren't arranged for a traditional battle. They were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would cover every possible approach to the inner system. Communications Officer Yextal, broadcast surrender demands. Channel open, sir. Kexmore straightened, preparing to deliver the same ultimatum that had convinced 17 species to submit to Imperial rule. Human forces, this is High Admiral Kexmore of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are facing the combined military might of an empire that has dominated this galaxy for 3 millennia. Your resistance has been noted and your courage acknowledged, but continued fighting serves no purpose. Surrender now, and your species will be granted favorable terms within the Imperial structure. The response came immediately from what appeared to be the largest human orbital platform, broadcast on all frequencies with crystal clarity, Zephyrian Fleet. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez, Supreme Commander of United Earth Forces. 71 days ago, your vessels murdered 10 million human civilians while broadcasting their deaths as entertainment. Since that day, humanity has devoted its entire civilization to preparing your destruction. Vasquez's voice carried across space with the weight of absolute conviction. We reject your surrender demands. We reject your offers of negotiation. We reject your very existence as a species worthy of sharing the galaxy with civilized beings. The transmission continued, and Kexmore felt something approaching fear creep into his consciousness. You will not be offered terms. You will not be taken prisoner. You will not be allowed to escape. Every ship in your fleet will be destroyed. Every world under Zephyrian control will be occupied. Your species will be removed from the galaxy as a threat to civilized life. Kexmore cut the transmission and looked around his bridge at officers who were staring at their instruments with expressions of growing alarm. Sir, Tactical Officer Zekhan reported, the human platforms are powering weapons. Energy readings are unprecedented. Define unprecedented. Sir, some of these platforms are showing power outputs equivalent to our largest dreadnoughts, and there are dozens of them. Through the viewports of the Empire's wrath, Kexmore could see the distant points of light that marked human defensive positions beginning to brighten as weapons charged. For 3,000 years, Zephyrian fleets had approached enemy worlds confident in their technological superiority and numerical advantage. Today, they were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had spent 71 days planning their extermination. All ships advanced to engagement range. Show these primitives the power of the Empire. But as the Zephyrian fleet began its approach toward the inner system, Admiral Vasquez was giving very different orders from her command platform. All stations, commence Operation Final Solution. Target priority is complete annihilation of all Zephyrian forces. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. The Battle of Seoul began with humanity's declaration that they had not built a defensive fleet. They had built an extermination system. The first salvo from human orbital platforms reached across space with weapons that had been refined and perfected over 71 days of preparation. The Stellar-class particle cannons that had destroyed individual ships at Luna City had been upgraded into systems capable of destroying entire formations simultaneously. The leading Zephyrian destroyers simply ceased to exist, their molecular structure disrupted so completely that they left behind nothing but expanding clouds of component atoms. But this was just the beginning. As the alien fleet advanced deeper into the system, they encountered layer upon layer of defensive positions, each one more lethal than the last.
Sir, Sensor Officer Yexcon reported, his voice rising with panic, we've lost the entire advance guard.
17 ships destroyed in the first exchange. Casualties on human forces? None detected, sir. Kexmore stared at his tactical display, watching red markers disappear as his ships encountered weapons that exceeded every projection of human capabilities. Continue the advance. All ships. Maximum firepower on the orbital platforms. The Zephyrian main fleet opened fire with weapons that had conquered star systems, their exotic particle beams reaching toward human defensive positions with energy sufficient to crack moons. For a moment, Kexmore felt the familiar satisfaction of watching enemy installations about to be destroyed by Imperial firepower. Then the human platforms returned fire. The weapons that struck the Zephyrian fleet weren't just more powerful than anything they had faced before. They were fundamentally different, designed by a species that had spent 71 days studying Zephyrian technology and engineering better ways to destroy it. Where Imperial weapons took time to overload shields and breach hulls, human weapons simply ignored defensive systems entirely, reaching through shields as if they didn't exist, and dissolving ships from the inside out. Sir! Tactical Officer Zekhan shouted over the sound of alarms. They're not just penetrating our shields, their weapons are passing through them without interaction. Impossible! No known technology can... The Empire's wrath shuddered as something struck its hull. But instead of the familiar sensation of energy weapons testing their shields, there was a different feeling, as if the ship itself was beginning to dissolve. Hull breach on deck 7 through 12, came the damage control report. Sir, the breach is expanding. Whatever hit us is continuing to eat through the ship. Kexmore looked at his tactical display and realized that humanity had not built weapons to fight the Zephyrian Empire. They had built weapons specifically to erase it from existence. All ships, emergency withdrawal to... His order was cut off as the second wave of human attacks reached the Zephyrian fleet. This time the weapons were different again. Instead of individual particle beams, the humans fired what appeared to be cascading energy waves that jumped from ship to ship, spreading destruction through the fleet. Like a plague, Sir, Communications Officer Yextel reported, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple ships. The Domination, Imperial Pride, and Conquest are requesting permission to abandon their vessels. Degride, all ships will fight to. Another wave of human weapons reached the fleet, and this time Kexmore recognized the technology. They were using quantum resonance bombs, weapons that destabilized matter at the subatomic level. Ships didn't just explode when hit by these weapons, they imploded, their mass collapsing in on itself before dispersing into energy. Sir, Sensor Officer Yexcan's voice was barely a whisper. We've lost 60% of the fleet. The humans are not taking casualties. Kexmore looked at his display, watching the systematic destruction of everything the Zephyrian Empire had built over 3 millennia. 400 ships that had been invincible for centuries were being eliminated by enemies they had dismissed as primitives just 71 days earlier. Analysis Officer Kekval, recommendation, Sir, we should surrender immediately and beg for mercy. And if they refuse, then, sir, we die here, and the Zephyrian Empire dies with us. But before Kexmore could respond, his tactical officer made an announcement that changed everything. 150 ships moving at maximum acceleration toward our position. Admiral Harrison's mobile fleet had been waiting beyond Pluto's orbit for exactly this moment. While the main Zephyrian force was being systematically destroyed by orbital defenses, his ships positioned themselves to eliminate any vessels that might attempt to escape. All ships, Harrison broadcast to his fleet, commence final phase operations. Target any Zephyrian vessel attempting to flee. No survivors, no escape, no mercy. The Battle of Sol became a massacre. Caught between orbital defenses that could destroy dreadnoughts in seconds, and a mobile fleet armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built, the Zephyrian fleet found itself in an impossible situation. Ships that attempted to advance toward Earth were destroyed by platform weapons. Ships that attempted to retreat were eliminated by Harrison's mobile fleet. Ships that tried to hold position were systematically hunted down by both forces. In 43 minutes, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Zephyrian Empire was reduced to expanding clouds of debris and radiation. High Admiral Kexmore died aboard the Empire's Wrath when quantum resonance bombs destabilized his ship's hull, but his final transmission was recorded and broadcast throughout the galaxy. To any Zephyrian forces receiving this message, do not engage the humans. They are not a primitive species. They are an extermination force that has spent 71 days perfecting the art of killing us. Warn the colonies. Warn the core worlds. Tell them that the Empire is. The transmission ended as the super dreadnought Empire's Wrath imploded into a brief, brilliant star. Admiral Vasquez watched the tactical display clear of enemy contacts, then opened a galaxy-wide communication channel. To all species monitoring this transmission, the Zephyrian main fleet has been eliminated. 412 ships destroyed without loss of human life. This concludes the military phase of our response to the Luna City genocide. She paused, consulting reports from human fleets throughout former Zephyrian space. Effective immediately, all former Zephyrian territory is under human administration. Zephyrian civilians will be relocated to designated worlds where they will remain under permanent supervision. Any species that provided support, resources, or safe haven to Zephyrian forces during this conflict should report to the nearest human administrator for processing. The transmission continued with details that made the galaxy realize humanity had not just won a war, they had implemented a final solution for the species that had made the mistake of killing 10 million humans while the universe watched. To species that remain neutral during this conflict, humanity bears no ill will toward those who chose not to become involved. To species that condemned Zephyrian actions and offered support to human forces, we look forward to establishing diplomatic relations. To species that supported Zephyrian genocide through action or inaction, you will be contacted regarding reparations and future restrictions. The message that echoed across the galaxy was clear. Humanity had not just defeated the Zephyrian Empire, they had erased it from existence and established themselves as the dominant military power. The highest in the southern and the shore of a movement and emergency was apished in the middle of a novelist. On Earth, President Santos addressed a joint session of the United Nations, speaking to a world that had been transformed by 71 days of total war. 71 days ago, aliens murdered 10 million of our people while broadcasting their deaths as entertainment. Today, those aliens no longer exist as a threat to any civilized species. The Zephyrian Empire, which dominated this galaxy for 3,000 years, has been eliminated entirely. She paused, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth, nations that had set aside every difference to focus on the complete destruction of their common enemy. But this victory came at a cost. We have become something we never intended to be, a species capable of total warfare, complete extermination, and absolute domination of our enemies. We have built weapons that can destroy stars, ships that can crack planets, and strategies that can eliminate entire civilizations. The president's next words carried to every human throughout the solar system. We did this because we were forced to. Because aliens mistook our civilization for weakness and our compassion for vulnerability. They learned too late that humans are not a peaceful species that has forgotten how to fight. We are a violent species that has learned to choose peace. The final message of humanity's first interstellar war was broadcast to the galaxy on the same quantum frequencies the Zephyrians had used to show the world Luna City's destruction. For 71 days, humanity devoted its entire civilization to the complete destruction of the Zephyrian Empire. Today, that task is complete. Let this serve as a permanent reminder to any species that might consider genocide an acceptable tool of policy. We are watching, we remember everything, and we do not forgive. The transmission ended with a simple postscript that became humanity's motto for its expansion into the galaxy. Never again, never forgotten. And in the expanding debris field where the Zephyrian fleet had died, space itself seemed to whisper the names of 10 million humans who had been avenged by the complete extinction of their killers. The galaxy had learned that humans were not a species to be underestimated. They were a species to be feared. The war was over. Humanity had won. And the universe would never be the same.